Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so it is a special episode. We're welcoming back to the show Tim Kintz, who is president of Kintz Group, and I'm proud to announce he's become an author in our best-selling Business Leaders book series to add to his collection of other bestsellers, Fearless and Frictionless. First off, hey, Tim, I just want to say welcome back to the show.
Great to be here, man. Thanks for having me. It's an honor every time.
All right, man. I always have fun every time I'm learning nuggets. And for all the audience listening, just so you know, Tim is an expert in sales. You're going to see as you stick with us through this episode, and you're going to pick up nuggets all over the place. I always do. I'm sure you will as well. Well, Tim, you already know the drill. We'll start this episode the way that we start them all, with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Tim, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Tim, what mission matters to you?
It's helping salespeople who rarely get the help they need, helping them get the tools to succeed. I think everybody has more potential than what they're achieving at any given moment. And I think having the resources for them, because look, face it, as a salesperson, we don't always have great managers and great leaders. So somebody needs to be out there giving them help, patting them on the back, encouraging them that they can achieve their true potential in life, whatever that is.
It's great. Love bringing mission-based individuals on the line. And for all our new listeners that maybe didn't catch some of our previous work, Tim, I mean, like, when did this obsession, if I may, or this love for sales, like, when did all that begin for you?
Man, I never grew up planning on being in sales. I ended up in car sales, and I always joke around that selling cars, you never grow up wanting to be a car salesperson. It's like you never make reservations at Denny's. You just end up there at 2 a.m. It's the same thing. You never plan to get in the car business, just kind of end up there. And just the whole series of events in my life had me end up in a dealership as a detailer and seeing how much potential there was in sales. And I transferred that competitiveness and fun from the baseball field to sales. And I think that was really the foundation, the fun, the competitiveness, the wanting to win, right? And learning from every loss that kind of made me enjoy selling. Because when you're selling cars, man, you're going to fail 7 or 8 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
And it's not anybody can handle success. It's how you bounce back from failure is what's really going to make people great. I always remember my first day of practice in college. Went out to Arizona, played out there. Our coach got us all together, first team meeting, said, look, guys, you guys are all good or you wouldn't be on this team. And we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about all the things you guys do great. You wouldn't be here if you didn't do great things. What's going to make us the national champions is how we bounce back from adversity. That's going to be the difference. And for whatever reason, that stuck with me for 35 years later. That's still my mindset.
Yeah. So that concept of competition and team and all the things that you brought over from sports, like, you found that environment in sales. Is that right?
Oh yeah. It was all about competition, fun. I mean, every customer that walked on the lot, it was a challenge. How can I win the game?
Was there a moment when you or was it a progression when you figured out, obviously you figured out your methodology and you figured out what worked for you? Was there a moment, or was it a progression when you were like, you know what, I want to help other people do this as well? Like, you've been blessed and you wanted to bless others.
I don't know if there was that one aha moment. I think it was a series of aha moments. One, I was blessed or lucky to have really good managers. I had, whether it was Dan Schumacher, Ron Downey, the guys that I would work with and managers that I had, they really had the mindset of they cared about me getting better more than I cared about me getting better, right? They spent time with me and they had fun doing it. And we got along outside of work, but we also got along really good in work. And I think that fun and the training they gave me kind of laid a foundation. And then I was in Alaska for 11 years and I was ready to get out of Alaska. I kind of did my time, as I always say.
Yeah.
And there was a training company, a big training company that offered me a job. And at that time, I was scared to death talking to groups of people. I mean, I didn't,
Wow.
Public speaking's the number one fear in life.
Oh, because at that point, correct me if I'm wrong, you've done more one-on-one or small groups because you're in the dealership setting, kind of.
Yeah, I could talk to my 60 salespeople because I could fire them if they didn't like what I said.
Yeah.
It was easy then, but public speaking to me, it's like Steinfeld always said, number one fear in life, public speaking. Number two is death. Yeah. Most people would rather be the dead guy in the casket than the guy standing up talking about the dead guy. So it was kind of the same thing. And I thought, you know what? I'm scared to death to do that. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna try it. And then again, I was blessed enough to have a manager, Kathleen Rittmaster, she was unbelievable, great coach, great trainer, and really she made it easy on how to learn. She was hard on me, but she understood what it took to be good at public speaking and spent a lot of time. And I had bad trainers that tried to help me within that company, but I always had that anchor person, man, that really pushed me to do it. And I think it clicks once you start having fun. It's, they'll do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life, kind of, but sometimes you got to do what you hate and then potentially see if you love it, because you don't know. If you always stay in your comfort zone, then you're never going to grow.
So you're in this this apprenticeship phase, and you're learning, you're figuring it out, and at some point you choose to launch, to go the entrepreneurial route and launch Kintz Group. Like, what was taking that leap like?
It was a big leap. 13 years doing it with this company, traveling the world, holding seminars. I mean, and they were all like workshops and seminar style. It was like concerts. I was same class, different city all the time, and it was kind of Groundhog Day for a while. So I left and went and ran a dealership, a Ford store. And then I realized how dated my training had become, or the company's training that I had worked for. It was the IBM in the digital world type of thing. Right. And it hadn't evolved. And I think the best thing I did was leave the training industry for a year, realize how digitized sales has become and how the customer had changed so much. And I realized at that point, you know what, man, we need to get some good training, some relevant training into our business. And that's when I decided to start the Kintz Group, because I saw the need for it, man. I saw salespeople struggling with old school tactics that didn't work on modern day selling.
Yeah. So what was that? Let's stay in, like, I obviously know about your work now, but what were those early years like? Like how did that work out?
Yeah, man, it was a lot of referrals. I had lots of friends in the business, been around for a while. I had a lot of guys say, hey, I saw you left the dealership. Why don't you come train our salespeople while you're figuring out what you're going to do when you grow up?
So you'd already built kind of a community, right? Like,
yeah, I had a lot of friends. The car business, it's a big industry, but it's very small as far as the circle of influence. Yeah. And man, I had a bunch of dealers say, hey, why don't you come train our store? And before you knew it, I had 8 to 10 dealerships I was going into every month or every other month. And then the Kintz Group just happened. It wasn't something that I decided it was going to be the Kintz Group, but I knew that we needed to have an evolution in it. And it was really from the friendships and relationships I had built with all these dealerships and dealers that allowed me to build the Kintz Group up. It wasn't just sitting in a room with a bunch of different people and brainstorming about some theory of starting a training business. It was, I was boots on the ground. I was roll the sleeves up. Let's get it going. I understood them. They understood me. We had a relationship. The trust was already there, right? And any sales, like we talked about before we started the episode, was you have to build trust. Any sales is all about trust, but it's earned and not given. And I think that's what really kind of catapulted, if you want to call it that, the Kintz Group into being, a strong, profitable company now.
Now, I know you as a content making machine, high quality content, but also in quantity. So, meaning books, training. I know you have a training coming up pretty soon, which you're welcome to talk about. I think it was Train the Trainer, something like of that nature. Correct me if I'm
Right.
wrong on the title. But like, when did the content portion of it like come? When did you kind of make that shift? And you're like, I gotta be top dog in this.
Um,
Or was that
it
from the
all,
beginning? It might have been from the
yeah,
beginning. I don't know.
it was from the beginning.
Mm,
Starting out with my initial road to the sale type of mindset, right?
yeah.
What is the up-to-date road to the sale from the point a customer walks on the lot to the point that they're burning gas and busting
Mm,
bugs down the road motors, and developing that, and
yeah.
then developing what I call the leadership quadrant, which
Yeah.
is learning how to lead, manage, train, and coach.
Mhm,
And it just evolves into realizing that, okay, within leading, managing, training, and coaching, those are
mhm.
all that's four separate skills I got to be great at as a leader.
Yeah.
We always look at selling skills for salespeople. Sometimes we forget about
Mhm.
leadership and management and training and coaching skills for management.
Mm,
Managers very often are the least trained people in any company.
yeah.
They got minimal training most of the time when they were selling,
Yeah.
and then they got promoted because they were the top salesperson.
Yeah.
And then their management training consists of spreadsheets
Mhm.
and all the detail type stuff, but there's very little people training in there. And
Mm,
then they're told that you need to train your sales team.
mm.
Okay. And most people are never trained on how to train, right? It's
Yeah.
not, and most training within companies, so often it turns into should be's, right? It's
Mhm.
you should be doing this, you should be doing that, you should be treating everybody like a buyer, you should be following up, you should be,
Mhm.
and we should all over them, right? Instead of it's not the how to's, right? Okay, we need to do follow up. How do we follow up, right?
Mhm.
Training, if it should be's, it's not training, it's just
Mm,
telling. It's because as a trainer, and that's what the Train the Trainer workshop is all about.
mhm.
It's not becoming a trainer within the company, it's becoming a sales trainer.
Mm,
Right? Because I'm not trainers tell, sales trainers sell.
yeah.
And so often we tell salespeople what to do instead of selling them on what to do. They're
Mm,
told instead of sold. If they don't buy in, then they're not going to use the techniques that you're teaching them. Right.
mhm.
So, as a trainer, as a manager in a store that holds training, you got to
Mhm.
think I'm a sales trainer. My salespeople are my customers. So, number one, I have to lower their guard, meaning I got to take away their defenses on why not to do what we're talking about.
Mm,
Then then they become open minded. So now they're at least going to listen to what I have to say when I'm giving them some skills or tactics on how
mhm.
to be better at sales. Once they're open minded and they start seeing how, wow, this can actually work, they become confident in you as a manager or as a
Yeah.
trainer, and then they trust you. And like I always say, trust is earned, not given. How do you earn
Mhm.
it? You lower the guard, they become open minded, then they're confident in you because they see you care about them, and
Mm,
then they trust you. So, really, training, no matter what your industry is all about selling and not telling.
mhm.
And it's really questioning your way to training, not telling your way to training.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a hard thing to learn, but I mean, it's as simple as should, and this would be the car business example, but
Yeah.
should we ask a customer if they want to go on a demonstration drive, or should we assume that most people want to go on a demonstration drive?
Right.
Well, and they're going to say, well, we should assume they want to go on a demonstration drive. And
Mhm.
I'll say, yeah, it works better that way, doesn't it? They'll say yes. And whose idea was it? Wasn't my idea. I gave
Yep,
them choice.
yep,
They
yep.
picked the common sense one. I agreed with them, got a tie down, and now it's their idea, right? And
Yeah.
that's what selling when you're holding training is all about. And I think
Mm,
that it's so, I don't know if it's underrated, but it's a skill that's undertaught
yeah.
to so many managers in so many industries. And I
Mm.
don't blame the managers for it. It's not their fault. It's just, we would rather spend
It's like you
$100,000.
said, and it's also like you said, they were given, the position because they were good at their job. It doesn't mean that they were given the tools. And what you're
That's right.
doing is you're giving them the tools.
That's right. It's like,
Yeah.
how often are managers told that you need to hold one-on-ones every day with your people?
Yeah.
Okay, but what do they talk about?
Yeah.
Right? It's you should hold a one-on-one. Yeah, but what do I cover? Well, just see what they got working. Okay, but that only lasts for a couple days, and then it's the same stuff they got working that week.
Yeah.
By the time I get to Wednesday, it's pretty much, what do you got working? Nothing. All right, well, you better get aggressive and get out there and start prospecting. Okay, boss. Yeah. But there's nothing in there on motivating them. There's nothing in there on looking at their goals, tying it to their vision, looking at their leading and lagging indicators to find areas of opportunity that you can do some personal coaching on their skills. I mean, there's a whole series of events that should happen in a one-on-one. And they don't have to be 30 minutes. But every day you have to spend time with your people, right? I always say, people don't go sideways and wake up one day and say, I'm quitting.
Yeah.
People go sideways a little bit at a time, and then they end up leaving your company. And if you spend time with them every day, you can eliminate some of those challenges that you have.
It's awesome. So speaking of motivation and motivating your team, let's talk a little bit about the book today. And for everybody watching, just so you know, there'll be a link in the show notes so you can pick up a copy. But let's get into the book content a little bit. So Motivate the Unmotivated. First off, what was the inspiration for this content? A lot of different ways you could have went with it.
Because it's a challenge that every manager's dealing with in today's world. I mean, every one of us go into stores or restaurants and you're trying to do business with unmotivated employees on a regular basis. I mean, you go, when's the last time you went into a restaurant and felt like you were interrupting the waiter or waitress? Yeah. And then they all have the 20, 22, 25, 30% little tip button on every one of their, on the credit card readers now, and they're expecting it, but they're not delivering the exceptional experience. So I think as managers, it's up to us to have motivated people because they're unmotivated on their own, right? It's that internal motivation versus external motivation. Yeah. Internal motivation is what we have to create. External motivation is what we do. So, that internal motivation, it's created over time. It's helping them have a purpose and tying them into the company's purpose and something bigger than collecting checks. External motivations, that Newt Rockney pump up, rah, run out of tunnel with your hair on fire. And that's something we have to do on a regular basis. But both of them are important. Internal motivation, that's giving them a purpose long term. External motivation is keeping them pumped up. And I think the external motivation, that I think it's underrated with a lot of people, because I had a manager say this not long ago. He says, I'm not into the rah stuff because it doesn't last. It wears off. And it's like Zig Ziglar used to say, so does bathing and eating, but we recommend you do it every day.
Zig. Love that one, by the way.
It's the same principle, man. Just because it wears off. Because it wears off, you have to do it more often.
That's true.
We have to get good at catching our people doing things good and not always catching them doing things bad. And a lot of managers out there are really good at catching them when they're doing something bad and always correcting them, whether it's on a one-on-one basis or whether it's in front of their other peers. But man, that's not creating that internal motivation that we're looking to create. And it's actually doing the opposite. It's in the book, I talk about the emotional bank account, right? And everybody's got an emotional bank account. And as managers, our job is to build that emotional bank account up as much as we can. We got to make deposits on a regular basis. And that's what catching them doing good things are, and giving them public recognition and having fun and competition within the company. That creates that adds to my emotional bank account. And it's going to happen all the time when I have to make withdrawals, when I catch them doing something wrong, or I have to kind of lock their heels for something. Then I have enough in their emotional bank account that I can make a withdrawal. But very often, managers are overdrawn because we're not making deposits, so we're overdrawn in our people's emotional bank accounts, and that's really truly something that we need to be conscious of as managers. That's the whole mindset behind the chapter in the book, man. Is look, you can motivate the unmotivated, but you have to do it with purpose. It's got to be intentional. It's not going to happen on its own.
So I wanna stick with that emotional bank account theme a little bit longer, because I found it super interesting. Where do you think that a lot of people go wrong? So like, is it, because I was thinking about this and I'm like, intuitively, I feel like nobody, especially if somebody's working for you, like you don't want to get rid of somebody. You don't want to let them go. You don't want to, like, even just the thought of having to train somebody else, like most people would, if they hired that person for a reason in the first place, they'd love to make it work. So if they're taking out more of that emotional bank account versus what they're putting in, and they have that imbalance that leads to possibly, the relationship ending, like, where do you think people kind of go wrong with that?
I think there's a couple things. One, we're never taught that when we become managers, right? So we don't really
naive part of it, a little bit of it.
Naive, lack of training, lack of understanding. It's
or maybe they didn't get it. Maybe they didn't get it when they were like coming up through the ranks.
Right. Yeah, I think some people become managers and they become power hungry. Right. I had a person working for me, and that person, they were told that they were in charge, and they became like, I mean, their whole mindset was let's demotivate everybody to make sure they know I'm the boss.
Oh, sorry,
that didn't help. Yeah, it's you never know until you know, right?
Yeah.
It's you don't know what makes that person tick necessarily. Sometimes there's good hires, sometimes there's bad hires, but it's some people are the wrong person for management, and they get in there and they want to be the boss. Other people, they got great intentions, they just don't know how to actually execute it, and education fixes that. Once they can be educated on, okay, this is how people's motivation works. Yeah. They're not all motivated like you are. They're not all motivated like I am. So it's learning what makes each person tick, and then using that to help them really see why everything you're teaching them is going to help them get to where they want to be. I think it really starts with having structure on what you're doing and why you're doing it, right? As a manager, every quarter, I believe that salespeople or managers should sit down with their sales team individually, and they need to one, come up with their long-term vision or purpose, whatever you want to call it. Where do you want to be in a perfect world? Where do you want to be in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever time frame you want, but it needs to be past a year or further out. And that gives them that long-term purpose. It doesn't have to be real. It's in a perfect world. If everything was the moon, stars, everything lined up perfectly, what do you want your life to look like in 3 years or 5 years? Because here's what I tell people all the time. Look, if you don't sit down and write the story of your life, it may not be your current story, but the story of where you want your life to be. If you don't sit down and write that, then somebody else is going to write your story for you. The problem is you're just going to be a character within their story, helping them achieve their purpose. So it starts with sitting down and identifying your purpose. What is your long-term dreams? In a perfect world, what do you want your life to look like in 5 years? As a manager, I want to know that, because now I can tie everything that we're doing today into where they want to be in 3 years or 5 years, because now it's not just a task. Now it's something they are doing to achieve what they want in 5 years. So then every quarter, I'm going to sit down with them and I'm going to do my quarterly goals. And we're going to look at their WIGs, their wildly important goals, professionally and personally. We're going to drive that down to leading and lagging indicators that we're going to start tracking. And then every day I'm going to be able to look at, are they on track? Are they off track? So often, though, it's kind of that rudderless ship. Right. Yeah. We've got so many salespeople that are rudderless ships, right? Just they go wherever the tide or wind pushes them. And it's that game called someday. Someday I'll set goals. Someday I'll create my purpose. Someday I'll start tracking. Someday I'll develop my skills. Someday turns into one of these days. One of these days turns into none of these days. And they keep doing the same thing, and they get in a rut. And the problem with the rut, eventually it turns into a hole and then becomes a grave. And that's when they jump ship to find a new groove. And that's going to be going to another company. So it really backs up to identify their purpose, break it down to their WIGs or wildly important goals, identify their action or create their action plan with leading and lagging indicators, and sit down every day with them to make sure they're on track or off track.
It's great advice. A lot to unpack there. And I'm going to pause on this particular book because I do want to give some time to some of the other works that you have out there. And again, for everybody watching this, like pick up a copy of the links in the show notes. So let's start with Fearless, leading and managing unbreakable teams. Maybe tell the audience a little bit more about that book.
So this was the second book I did.
Yep.
I wanted it to be my first book. This is on leadership, right? It's for managers because, again, like I said before, I think there's so many managers out there with good intentions. Mm-hmm. They just don't know where to start and what to do every day. And with my goal with Fearless was to have a book that was going to be something that could be sitting on their desk, have the pages being tattered, have sticky notes in there, highlighted it, folded over like an old Bible that people are bringing every Sunday to church with them. Because I didn't want a whole bunch of theory on leadership. And look, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of great books out there on leadership, but so often it's the 13 characters that are, 13 characters that you need to have to be a great leader or qualities of a leader. Those are great, but when you read them, it's like, yeah, that's cool, but how do I apply that in my real world?
Yeah, how do I do
it? I come in the morning. I got my boss screaming at me. I got 800 emails I got to look at. I got spreadsheets that need to be done by the 9 o'clock manager meeting. I got other departments asking me for things, and you're like, and then I'm supposed to actually lead and manage my people. How do I pull that off? That's what I wanted Fearless to be. I wanted it to be that guide to help them identify the specific leadership skills that they had to work on, not just qualities, but day-to-day skills, so they could become that manager and leader that their team needs and deserves.
Yeah.
That's what Fearless was all about.
All right. And then the first book, so Frictionless, Closing and Negotiating with Purpose. Give us more on that one.
So, number one, my timing sucked on it. Okay, because this came out in February of 2020, and it's all about face-to-face selling. And then we had the pandemic, which we couldn't face-to-face sell for a year or so. So the timing wasn't great, but now it's kind of a relaunch of it because
for sure
we're back to basics, right?
Now it's more relevant than ever because now everybody forgot how to do face-to-face. So they needed help in the first place with it. Now the ones that could do it forgot, were rusty. Like, it is what it is. So go ahead.
Use it or lose it, right? It's the veterans who were selling pre-pandemic. That's like, okay, I used to be a great golfer, but I hadn't golfed in 3 years. Well, I'm going to suck. Even though my mind knows what to do, it doesn't mean my body's going to actually do it.
For sure.
Right? It's the same thing with sales. And then we've got a lot of people over the last 3 years that have gotten into sales, and they don't know what it was pre-pandemic. It was order taking. It wasn't selling. It was, do you have the product? Me and my wife, we renovated our house. It wasn't, can I get a good deal on a Viking range and refrigerator and hood? It's, where can I find the damn thing and get it in time for the renovation? And you paid whatever you had to pay. I wasn't shopping a bunch of people, right? So I think that it hits all demographics of people in sales in today's world. And it's literally all about closing and overcoming objections and negotiating. And I wrote that first because I saw the need salespeople had to learn how to negotiate was greater at that moment than what managers needed to become better leaders, if that makes sense. It was, I think negotiating in so many industries is a lost art. I think people are afraid to negotiate. Well, we'll just go to one price. Nobody wants to negotiate. They come in and say, I want your best price. And then you give them the best price and they're like, oh, I'm not paying that. I'll give you this for it. I thought you wanted the best price. Look, everybody wants to negotiate. Negotiating is, it's just what we do. We've done it since the beginning of time, negotiating. But my whole thing with negotiating is we got to negotiate out of inspiration, not desperation. And I think more people, when they negotiate, are more afraid from the salesperson side of losing the deal than they are inspired to make the deal. They're playing prevent defense when they're negotiating. And with one of the golden rules in negotiating, and I talk about it, the 5 golden rules of negotiating in the book, is whoever cares least about a deal wins. Meaning that customer needs to want to buy your product more than you want to sell it to them. Not that you don't want to sell it to them, but I need to build the value so high create the mental ownership where the customer already owns that in their mind, that now the negotiations are going to go a lot easier. I mean, just look at Apple phones. Every time they come out with a new Apple phone, everybody's got to have it, right? It's if you have a good realtor, they walk you through the house. They've got kids picking out their rooms. You're figuring out if your furniture fits in the curtains. And when you walk out of that house, you've already mentally moved your furniture in, and you haven't even made an offer on the house yet.
Yeah.
Right. So all
two total different experiences. Yeah.
Absolutely. Versus somebody begging you to buy it. You're like, I don't really know. I mean, have you ever offered somebody, I'll give you $100 for that? And they're like, okay. What's the first thing that goes to your mind when they say, okay?
I gave them too much.
Yeah. Oh, I could have. You know what? I'm going to talk to my wife about it. I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Because I could have got it for less. Right. So it's, how do I make somebody feel like they win? It's that win-win relationship you create, not just a win-win negotiation.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a high level view of frictionless.
Yeah. Well, Tim, man, I got to tell you, it's always great having you on the show. I mean, I pick up something every single time we talked, and not just on the show, but in general. What's next? I mean, what's the future of the Kintz Group look like for content creation? Like, what's next? What do you got cooking?
Man, we're busy as one-legged man in an ass kicking contest right now with the need for sales training, which it's a good thing. But two, I'm in the process right now of putting together my next book, which hopefully will be launched. Well, the process. Hopefully, sometime second quarter of next year, and it'll be goal setting. It'll all be about goal setting and purpose and vision, and in real life on how to pull the stuff off, with worksheets and formulas on walking everybody through it, instead of just a high level theory book. And man, we're just growing, having fun.
Man, that's awesome. What's the best way for people to the audience to connect and to consume the content, connect with your team? Like, how do people connect overall?
KintzGroup.com. You can go there. We've got tons of resources on there. Got blogs, got video blogs. You have lots of free downloads that people can get on. May have to tweak them a little bit. A lot of it's made for the car business, but it still applies to sales. A lot of free downloads on evaluating your sales training program, evaluating your sales team, evaluating salespeople. We just put a new one on there on who's making you money, who's costing you money. So a lot of calculators and stuff. We keep adding to it. I got about 20 projects right now that are being done to keep adding value to the site. So keep an eye out for it. Keep going there on a regular basis.
Man, that's awesome. And we'll put all that information in the show notes, of course, so that the audience can just click on the links, head right on over to your website, and also pick up a copy of that book and your other books as well.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters or engaging in an episode, we're all about bringing on business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives, and having them share their mission, the reason behind their mission, like what gets them motivated and fired up to go out into the world and to make a difference. If that's the type of content that sounds interesting or fun or exciting to you, we welcome you. Hit that subscribe button. We have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line, and we don't want you to miss a thing. Tim, as always, man, a pleasure having you on the show. Can't wait till the next time we get to work with each other.
My pleasure, man. Take care.